Welcome to the SMJ Podcast with Stephen Jones, broadcasting through George Mason University. On my inaugural episode, I spoke with Dr. Walter E. Williams, John M. Olin Distinguished Professor of Economics, who holds a BA degree in economics from California State University and MA and PhD degrees in economics from UCLA. He has served on the faculties of Los Angeles City College, California State University at Los Angeles, and Temple University in Philadelphia. Dr. Williams is the author of over 150 scholarly and mainstream publications. He has authored 10 books, including America, A Minority Viewpoint, and The State Against Blacks, which was later made into the PBS documentary Good Intentions. He has appeared on Nightline, Face the Nation, and Milton Friedman's Free to Choose. In addition, Dr. Williams writes a nationally syndicated weekly column that is carried by approximately 140 newspapers and several websites. He has received numerous fellowships and awards, including the 2017 Bradley Prize from the Lynd and Harry Bradley Foundation, California State University Distinguished Alumni Award, and George Mason University Faculty Member of the Year. George Mason University has also been his teaching home since 1980. I started my conversation with Dr. Williams by asking him how he got into economics and how he philosophically approaches the subject.
In 1963, I was a major in sociology, and over the summer, I read a book by Du Bois, and it was called Black Reconstruction, and in there he said that black people are not going to get very far ahead in our country without understanding economic system. And that encouraged me to change my major to economics from sociology. And I went back to a junior standing as a result of the major change in the major. But I'm very pleased I changed my major.
And how do you approach teaching economics in the classroom? Like, what angle do you approach it from?
Well, I teach our PhD microeconomic theory. Our first incoming PhD students, they take the theory class. And I teach the undergraduate intermediate economic theory. And the theory and what I teach is strictly microeconomics. And I think that to try to convince students to believe the way that you believe, I think that's academic dishonesty, and I think far too many professors are using their classrooms to proselytize students.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And so and I've been an admirer of your work and Thomas Sowell's for many years. So I noticed like both of you, and I think you have a really interesting approach, is you try to apply the philosophy of liberty to your approach to economics. Why specifically liberty out of every other type of economic philosophy?
Well, I think that the idea of free markets and voluntary exchange, I believe that I think it's morally superior to other ways of deciding how goods and services will be allocated in our society. I think that it's the ideas of John Locke and Friedrich Hayek and a number of the other great philosophers in our down through history have pointed out that people who are free tend to get more or progress more than people who are not free.
Okay. And so you hear a lot about that, and also today the usual counter argument is, well, we have the 1%, only a certain percentage of people in the entire world have this certain amount of wealth, and everybody else kind of just sits around. They always use the phrase trickle-down economics. What do you think of that counter argument?
Well, I think if you look into any economics textbook, and even beginning textbooks, elementary textbooks, you don't find the term trickle-down economics. That's just political exploitation of people's ignorance. But if you look at in a free society, the way that you accumulate wealth is by pleasing your fellow man. That is, producing things your fellow man wishes. It just turns out that somebody like Bill Gates, he produced windows and other things that his fellow men around the world appreciated, and they just gave him a whole lot of dollars in return for producing that good. You know, what one can think about is that, you know, I mow your lawn, you give me $20. Well, and then I take the $20 and I go to the grocery store and I ask for a pound of steak and a six-pack of beer that my fellow man produced. And the grocer, in effect, says, well, you're making a demand, Williams, on what your fellow man produces. What did you do for him? And I say, I mowed his lawn. He says, prove it. And then that's when I show him the $20. And so one can think of the $20 as certificates of performance or as evidence that I served my fellow man. And in a free society, the only way that you can have a claim on what your fellow man produced is by serving your fellow man. And so some people are able to serve their fellow man better than others, and they have and as a result they have more wealth. And so I think what one wants to keep in mind is that money or income is not distributed. That is, people earn income by serving their fellow man. Now, having said that, I'm not going to ignore the fact that many people use the government as a way to accumulate wealth. They use the government to make laws that stymie competition, that keep their fellow man out of the game, or they use laws to take what their fellow man produces and for themselves. And so that kind of stuff has to be, I think it has to be condemned.
Turning to one of the most talked about issues of economics, I brought up the subject of the wage gap, a topic still protested by many social justice movements as being the result of systemic corruption.
I mean, there has been racial discrimination and sexual discrimination in our country, but I don't think that explains the income or wage gap differences between people. And so it turns out that in many activities, white people have the advantage on black people, and many activities, men have the advantage over females. That is, my colleague Tom Sowell some years ago, he did a study, and of the salaries of professors, and he found that the bottom line is that female professors with the same number of publications, the same quality degree, the same amount of years of experience, their income was slightly higher than males of the same description. Now, it turned out that these female professors who were earning more than men, they were never married. And compared to male professors who were never married, it just turned out that their median income was about $400 more. Or if you look at doctors, medical professions, you say, well, the average doctor, male doctor's pay is higher than female doctor's pay. Well, if you look at the distribution of doctors, it turns out that many, or perhaps most, female doctors are pediatricians, and many male doctors are brain surgeons. And you'll find that brain surgeons will make more money than pediatricians. And so, however, women choose to become pediatricians many times because that's more consistent with their homemaking preferences, raising children and taking care of children, things like that. And so what you have to do, you have to kind of look behind the data and see, ask the question, what explains the difference? And very seldom you'll find that race explains the difference, and very seldom that you find that sex alone or race alone explains the differences in income.
Now, why do you think that thinking is so inappealing? Why is the word inequality, why is that so scary?
Well, I don't know. The only kind of equality that is consistent with personal freedom is equality before the law. And any other type attempts to create equality are inconsistent with freedom. That is, if you say, well, we're going to make equal pay, make a law that people get equal pay, well, that will violate personal freedom. And so I think that a lot of people are concerned. They say, well, we want people to be equal, but they don't really understand that the only kind of equality, as I said before, the only kind of equality that's consistent with liberty is equality before the law.
On current issues, Dr. Williams gave his views on the COVID-19 shutdown and the economic ramifications of it.
Well, I think that represents the fact that people tend to have a single vision. That is, they're saying, well, gee, the shutdown or lockdown, that saves a lot of people getting the virus. And so they say they only look at the benefit of the shutdown in terms of what it does for catching the virus. But then you have to ask the question, well, what are the costs associated with the shutdown? Forget about the COVID virus, but what's the cost of the shutdown? And people just ignore it. And many lives are lost because of the shutdown, because people have not been able to get the kind of treatment or do the kind of elective surgery that's necessary. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people have psychological problems. And all kinds of problems associated with the shutdown, and those are ignored. That is, and so if you just look at just looking at the benefits or whatever benefits that come from reducing the rate of infection by the COVID virus, and if you ignore everything else, well, then that's not the way that economists think about things. We have to include the cost of the shutdown, not only in terms of the virus and the rate of infection, but the other effects that are associated with the shutdown.
A true patriot at heart, Dr. Williams holds Mason's ideal of patriotism by embracing the Founding Fathers' intent for a prosperous and peaceful society.
Well, I think it's to love one's country and to be willing to make sacrifices for one's country, and I think that's the sense, being a patriot.
Okay, and GMU is the place to be for that, right?
Yes, at least the economics and the law school.
Definitely not the humanities school.
Right, okay.
I'd like to thank Dr. Williams for giving me his time and discussing these various topics. I'm Stephen Jones with the SMJ Podcast, broadcasting through George Mason University, and see you around.